Hello, hello, everyone. Let's try it again. I'm not sure if this is going to work. We're going to try it out and see.
Edie.
Let's see. Give me just a minute. I'm going to turn on the volume again as soon as I can see it. There's like a 10-second delay or 15-second delay. So, welcome, all you replayers. We're almost at that point. Hold on just a second. Just a minute. Oh, yep. It worked. Yay, it worked. Yay, it worked. So, welcome, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cindy. I am the modern day spiritual advisor. I use multiple modalities to help you on your path. And now am the author of my upcoming book series, Concepts Create Reality. I have the beautiful, wonderful diva herself, Sparkletini. She is right next to me. You'll see her. I think it's this way. So, welcome, Sparkletini. And then after her, we have Lindsay. And I will explain who Lindsay is in just a minute. But say hello to Sparkletini first.
Hello, everyone. I am Miss Diva Sparkle, Sparkletini, Sparkletitas, whichever sparkle you would like to call me is fine, as long as you don't call me the B word. It is not nice. However, I am a Reiki practitioner, soon to be Reiki master as of tomorrow. Yay!
Yay! Hold on a second.
I am an intuitive empath and life coach, among other things that I'm working on. So thank you, Cindy, for inviting me yet again.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming out and being with us. Sorry, I'm like moving my camera around. Okay. So next to Sparkletini, we have the beautiful, wonderful Lindsay. Lindsay.
Hi.
Lindsay, I'll let her explain who she is, but I do want to say that she does research and she has a PhD as a psychology in personalities. So in relationships she deals with. So she does research in spaces and relationships. So I'll let her explain who she is.
Hi, guys. So I'm super excited to be here with Cindy and Melissa. I'm a personality psychologist. And as Cindy said, I study people's spaces and how we form our relationships with our environment as well as with one another. And, how the spaces that we exist within, whether they're virtual or physical, can influence who we are.
Right. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, and for those of you that are replaying tonight, we are going to talk about relationships and dating. So, we have three experts here. Melissa was married for a very long time, and I was married for a long time. And then we have the personality expert over there.
Who has not been married ever.
Yeah, who has not been married. But if you have any questions, if you guys have any questions, we would be happy to answer them as intuitives, as mediums, as psychologists. And Lindsay is an intuitive as well. So just like this whole group. So what makes her like the bomb is that she's using her intuition as well as the psychology part of it as well. So hi everyone. Hello Jesse. Hello Amy. Hello Sandra. Hello Michelle. Hello Rebecca. Miss Leo. How are you? And there's David in chat. Hi Sunflower. How are you? So does anybody have any questions? Hi, Tammy. Hi, my happy ending. Hi, Tamika. How are you? So, Lindsay, you're just waiting for your emperor. Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Hello, like and share. Thank you. So, relationship talk. Exactly what I needed tonight. Yes. Thank you. We are back. Yes. Yes. Hello, ladies. Hello. Well, I'm single and I just want to know if I'll find the one this year. So we're not doing psychic readings, but if you have questions about relationships, about how you handle relationships, about any of that, we're welcome to chat with you. We're not going to be doing any psychic readings or intuitively, we can answer your questions if you have questions. Will I ever find love? Well, yeah, absolutely. You'll find love. Please help. I just got back with my husband. Okay, so Amanda seems to have a question. What's your question, Amanda, about you getting back with your husband? this forum, just in case, let's just be very clear. This forum is just to sort of chat and say hello and see how everybody's doing, and see, as as people gather or friends gather, to say, hey, I have this story about this, and what do you think about this? And this person is, this relationship looks like this. So what do just those kinds of questions. Hello, hello. Hi, Diana. Hi, Arudia. Hi, Denise. Yes, relationship guidance and dating.
That's right.
I know a lot about dating and marriage. I mean, I know both.
You know all the things.
I'm just waiting on my king, Cindy, and Sparkles told me about on Sunday. Oh, okay. How do I forgive someone that never said sorry? That's a good question. Okay.
A really good question.
So, Lindsay, how do I forgive someone that never said sorry?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, what is it that you're really wanting with that particular relationship and interaction? And what was your role within the situation? And it's always important to remember that, even when people disappoint us, that we have some sort of role within that interaction as well. And it's not necessarily that we did something right or wrong, but we called that into our life for a reason.
Right.
And so, I think the thing you have to ask yourself is like, why do you need the apology? And there's no right or wrong answer to that. Like, sometimes people cross our boundaries, and that warrants an apology in our minds. But
right.
I think that, it's important to understand your own motivation for needing that apology. And then once you can kind of suss that out, then you can really realize whether or not that's a person that you still want in your orbit. And you always have to kind of bring it back to you and what it means to you and how you've interacted in that situation to know why.
Yeah, that brings up a good, because I'm thinking from a different perspective. I'm agreeing with you, except for like what you were saying earlier. What if that person didn't understand, because they don't live in your skin from your perspective? They didn't understand. Maybe they knew the bigger things that they did wrong, but maybe something that really, really hurt you, they weren't even thinking that was going to hurt.
Right.
So what do you do in that situation? How do you resolve that for yourself?
I think the biggest thing is like I said to begin with, you have to really see like what your role is and why you need that apology, because you need to understand what is it that actually triggered you and upset you in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then once you know that, then you can more accurately articulate that to the other person. Mm-hmm. And help them understand or address the situation at hand. So like if somebody says, like if Cindy, or let's say if Melissa said something mean to me or something that was offensive to me, but she didn't mean it that way and didn't even know that that was something that was triggering me, how could she ever tell me she was sorry if she didn't know I was upset?
Right. Or you didn't tell her.
Exactly.
That's so true.
So you have to be open there.
Melissa, did you ever have a situation like that with your husband? And what did you do about it?
Well,
I'm just trying to give people different perspectives.
There were plenty of times where I experienced some things that he did, and actually, yes. Especially when we were dating, there were a couple of times that he said some things that were really hurtful, and he never said, I'm sorry for this or that or whatever. But it was more like, for me, I had to understand his faults and the fact that he didn't realize that he was saying something that was hurtful. And
Okay. And did you ever tell him?
no, I never did tell him or indicate that something that he said was hurtful. Um, but it was just something that I realized, I think, later. It was more like um, something that I thought about later on,
Mm-hmm.
was how I discovered what true love is. It's about when you are in love with someone and you love that person in spite of
Right.
every fault. Um,
Right.
that to me is the definition of what true love is. And I think that I realized that more after we were divorced than while we were married.
Right.
Um, I've gotten a lot of realizations over probably the last few years about that. So, but it is a difficult situation, especially when you're hurt and you don't want to cause a confrontation. Um,
Right.
but you have to look at it from, like, Lindsay is saying, you have to look at it from both
Right.
sides, not
Right.
just your side.
And so, but this is what we have relationships we learn, right? And so I'm going to play devil's advocate. Do you think, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. Do you
Hmm.
think that if you had understood yourself and had come through, certain things and certain ways and certain environment and certain family,
Hmm.
do you think that if you knew yourself at that time, that if your husband did say something or did something to offend you or did something to you, if you understood it from that point, if you knew yourself, um, at that point, would it be better? Or do you think that if you were to say
I
something to him
think
and
that,
say, hey, this hurt my feelings, or hey, I feel like
mhm,
this, or this is a trigger for me, or blah, 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 do you think that would have made a better situation than never
well,
saying anything at all?
looking at it now, I
Hmm.
probably would have said something back then, like, that was, wow, that was really hurtful,
Right,
and let him know that that was not cool.
right,
Um, and I feel like in that way, um, I would be standing in my truth, because the
right,
truth was that hurt.
hmm,
And he needed
right.
to know that it was hurtful to me. And I think
But,
that that would maybe later on give him pause as to, before he goes to say something to someone else or
right,
even to me,
right,
okay, maybe I should word that a little bit better.
right.
Um,
And I'm getting somewhere with this because what I'm thinking is
mhm.
this is the reason why it's so important for us to know ourselves before
Yes,
we try to do all these relationships, right? I mean,
yes,
yes.
definitely.
As so my saying is always, and I learned this from my parents, as we know better, we do better, right? As we know better, we do
Yes,
better. So we can't like sit in the guilt of, well, all those past things were just a waste and all that time was just awful and maybe it should have been better and all that guilt. That's not necessary. We didn't know
mhm,
better at the time. But now that you know better, now that you understand, hey, it takes me loving myself and knowing what I like and dislike and knowing how I want to be
yes,
loved and love,
hmm,
and how I want to love for me to have a relationship. So
definitely.
that's where I'm getting to. I'm just playing
Yes.
devil's advocate here.
Well, to be the total honest truth,
Hmm.
knowing now what I know now,
Yeah.
I would have probably never got married to that particular person, because
Right.
at that time I was looking for something outside of myself that I should have already had.
Which
And
I'll do you one better.
yeah,
You didn't know because that is what you wanted to experience. So you didn't become aware until later of that.
right,
Does that
right.
make sense to you?
Oh
So
yes,
if you would have known
definitely.
better, you would have never had that
I would
marriage.
have,
And then
yes,
you wouldn't have had that child. And then you would have had this
exactly,
life and you wouldn't have done those
exactly.
things. So you really wanted to
So
experience
yeah, so I
those.
had to go through all of that in order to get to where I am now. So yes, I
Hmm.
do understand that too.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
definitely.
yeah, Amanda was saying that's the problem where everyone has a different perspective. No, that's not a
Mhm.
problem. That's not a problem. It's
No,
a great
I
thing that
want
everyone has
to
their perspective.
also, Amanda was indicating that she just got back with her husband,
Hmm.
um, and she was, and I was kind of looking at that as well, because that is also something that I experienced while
Hmm.
I was married. The fact that my husband had an addiction, had a
Hmm.
drug addiction,
Hmm.
and she was really talking about uh, wanting to, I guess, be forgiving to him. I was trying to go back and read what she was saying, but having someone and being with someone with a drug addiction is very, it is very difficult. That is, especially when you want to be a good wife, you want to be, um, and back then, of course, I wanted to be the good Christian wife
Yeah, I
and
was going to
help
say
him
it must have
through.
been so hard because you're from this
Yeah, I
point
mean, because
of
there's so
I want to
much
love, I
that,
know a marriage you don't fail at. This is blah blah blah. Yeah, like it must have been really hard for you because
yeah, because
you're
there's so
coming from
many
that space
things that,
and you're talking about a person who's so addicted to something else that they're not even making rash decisions or rational
yeah,
decisions, right?
mhm.
It's not even looking correct because that just
Yes,
must have
you
been
know,
very
that is,
confusing and hard to you.
yes, it was very, very difficult. And especially at that time, um, I had just had my son,
Hmm.
and he was going through this whole other phase. And it was like we were at two different ends
Hmm.
of the spectrum.
Right.
And and of course, me not really not knowing, what do you do? How do you
Hmm.
handle that? Praying and just trying to be helpful to someone who really wasn't helpful to themselves or didn't know
Hmm.
how to be helpful to
Hmm.
themselves. And it's not easy. It is not an
So
easy
my
task.
question is because we're going to have people on here that are watching, maybe at some
Hmm.
point in a year, they're still watching this video. Somebody is going to hear this, and their question's going to be, "How did you get through it? How did you come through that?"
Uh, well, the way that I survived it pretty much was just continuing to be, and I know it sounds cliche, being positive and just
Hmm.
holding my ground as to who I was. And of course, what I believed at the time, being a good wife, being there for uh, my husband, and those marriage vows that really meant a lot to me, because the richer for poor, for better for worse, and that of
Hmm.
course was actually that was better or worse. So I had to put a lot of myself aside and try to help him as best as I could, because I had never experienced that before, so I didn't really know what to do.
Right.
I just tried to be there and give as much love and support um, as I could to into a subject that I really knew nothing about.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I, I
And
had,
so, but
never taken
you
drugs
went,
before, so I didn't know.
but you went into yourself and you were intuitive about it, right?
Mhm.
So it didn't
Yeah,
matter what anybody else was saying. It was what you were in tune with for yourself and your morals and your aspect and your perspective, right?
yes, that is so true. Rishi was asking, did he have an addiction before the marriage? No, he did not. At least not that I knew of at the time. I think maybe he dabbled in it a little bit, but
Hmm.
I think he got into it after, because I lost a set of twins, and he seemed to go this way and I went that way.
Right.
He didn't know how to, he handled it the best way he could, and that was for him to be addicted into drugs and alcohol. For me, it was giving my life to God.
Mm-hmm.
So we handle it in two different ways. So I tried to meet as much as I could in the middle and try to help as much as I could with that. And like
Mm-hmm.
I said, I really didn't have a clue other than to just be there as best I could.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only thing I knew to do, really.
Yeah.
And to hope that it would get better. Um, and that was all I had. That was all I
And
had.
then I'm going to ask you one more question. That I'm going to ask Lindsay's advice in the situation. But at what point did that turn around for you? At what point did you finally stand up and say? And what did it take, or did it even take
Yeah.
anything, or did you just wake up one day and say it for you to get out of that?
Going through those years, and it was years. It wasn't just like, okay, this happened one year, then the next year,
Mm-hmm.
It was a series of like, over 2 to 3 years that
Mm-hmm.
this was going on. And even after the birth of our son, it was still going on.
Mm-hmm.
So really, he did leave a couple of times, and each time he went and then he came back, and he left and he came back. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm wanting off this ride.
Right.
I've had, enough. But that was just something that I had to come to terms with,
Right.
within me, because before I got married and all these times I would say, oh, I would never do that. Oh, I would just do this and this. If someone did this to me. But when you get married, it kind of puts a little bit more emphasis on it, because that commitment.
Right.
Makes it a little bit more real.
It means something to you. It means something to you. No matter what it meant to anybody else, it meant something to you,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Right.
It was, I was going through that. And of course, at the time, I had people in my ear saying, what? You're going through? What are you doing? And I was like, look, he is my husband. And, I'm going to try to be there as best that I can.
Right.
And of course, once it kept continuing on and on and on, finally I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I thought about too, not just the fact that it was just me. At that point, I had a 2-year-old son. And
yeah, you had your baby.
Now, how much of this does he need to see? Because him watching us go through all of this, us fussing and all of this, how much is that worth us continuing to be together? Because I didn't want him to grow up thinking, okay, oh, that's the norm. That's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
I know I had heard several times, if love doesn't hurt, it's not right, and all this kind of stuff.
Wow, that just gave me chills, because that is so not right.
Yeah,
right? That's the exact opposite.
Oh my God, that just
all
like
of these things, all of these programs are running in the back of our minds. So at that time, I was, going through all of that, and of course the Christian thing and all of this, and I had to work through all of that, and then finally get to the point where it was like, okay, this is enough. So the last time he decided to walk out, that was it for me.
Right.
And of course he contacted me later and was like, of course he wanted to come back, and I was like, no. And that took a lot, and that was when I finally stood up for me. I finally stood up for myself and was like, no, that's it. I'm not taking that anymore. And that was really the beginning of this journey that I have been on the last few years, has been me figuring out who I was. And a lot of that came from coming out of that marriage and that environment, and deciding where I wanted to go. So yes, going through that marriage, that showed me a lot. It showed me what kind of man I wanted, showed me what kind of relationship I wanted, what kind of partnership I wanted.
Right.
So I'm thankful for it. I know it was crazy, and that might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I am thankful for that experience, because had I not gone through that, I wouldn't know and be who I am now.
Right.
The
Right.
Sparkletini that you know right now, totally different from who I used to be back then.
Right.
Totally different person.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I know we've had a lot of people commenting. You're really inspiring people. Roto Mom Moon, Ropo To Mom Moon, I don't even know. Was saying this may be for some, people's guidance, but maybe not for others. So this is why we want to get to the core of it, because no matter what your situation, if you are standing strong, if you understand what you want, if you understand that you are in charge of your world, if you understand that you are a powerful being, if you understand that you allow and not allow people to treat you and do and all of that, then you will make your life better. It comes from your perspective, right?
Exactly. That's what I had to learn. I had to learn that because the reason, and this is all coming from total hindsight, that the reason that I got married, it was the wrong reason in the first place, because I was looking for outside of me someone to fill that hole. And I know we talked about that before, Cindy, where, you look outside of yourself. Some of us look outside of ourselves to fill that hole. And that's what we are doing when we are single.
Yep,
it's
true.
That's not going to work. And then when you do find someone, of course, he's going to have a hole too.
He is, because you're vibrating at the same thing.
He's got a hole.
Yeah,
and
so you both have holes, and you're both filling the holes.
And then you have
this is what happens is you fill the holes, and then you have both holes filled.
Yes.
And because you have both holes filled, you're thinking, I want more. There's more that I want in a relationship, because that's not really the relationship you want. That's just the one that put the Band-Aid over it. That's when you start thinking, well, I want to be loved like this. I want a different type of relationship. I want blah, blah, blah. Yes. That's because your holes are filled. Now fill your own holes so that you get to that point on your own, and then you start your relationships. Exactly. Then you start that romantic relationship.
That's another part that that's something that I've always heard, 2 halves of a whole. That is total
You're welcome,
BS.
Amy. It is. Listen,
supposed to be with holes, not.
Lindsay would know this about medical. In medical, we have the 1 and 1 makes 3 theory, right? So one part of one and another part of another would actually make 3 instead of 2. It's more potent. That's my theory about, when you do in a relationship, you want to expand. So you have 1 and 1 makes a bigger thing, makes a whole new thing, makes a whole new energy, but makes it more, makes it way more, right?
Exactly.
So I'm going to ask Lindsay's advice too.
Like I was saying, that's that program. That's that program that's running in the back of our minds. Things that we've heard over the years. Things that we've seen or and taken in and not realizing that is what is making us the way that we are.
Right.
And so yes, that is just totally true. So that is something that I now understand, and that is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a half of a person. I'm looking for the whole person.
That's an emperor.
My wholeness.
Yeah, that's an emperor. So that's an emperor.
Yeah.
So, Lindsay, my darling, what advice can you give us? Or what advice can you give anybody that's in maybe this situation right now, or maybe have just come through this situation and they're like in shock and don't know what to do, right?
So the situation that Melissa was in, or
so people that are
going back to,
we can go back to, being in relationships and having people hurt you and you not say anything.
Yeah. So I think that, it's like I very first said, you have to know you. You have to know your role in all of this. And you have to know, and maybe to say your role is like oversimplifying it. It's more like you have to know yourself and what your truth is and what your boundaries are and what you want to be able to put up with in that situation. And it's really hard to get past that sometimes, especially when you have other people in your life telling you, that you're being too harsh, or that you're not being harsh enough, or that you're, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And I think that, I obviously, because I've never been married and in a relationship like that, I can't specifically relate to that, but it's reminding me of multiple other situations that I've been through in my life. And
those are just as true.
Right, exactly. Like, I think
which is the whole point of why which is some of the point of why I want you here, because I want people to understand that even though they veer towards the romantic and the partnership, we have these relationships in all areas of our life. And when you take a look at what's going on, you're really doing them in a lot of areas of your life.
Exactly.
Right?
So I'll give you my example then of like Melissa's. So mine was with my dad, who was incredibly emotionally and verbally abusive. And so I had that my whole life and was being told, no, this is your father. It doesn't matter what he does or says or is doing to you. It's your father. You should love him. You have to, respect him. You have to feel this way and that way. Don't worry about the fact that he's telling you you're worthless, or that he's manipulating you, or that he's, telling you these terrible things, or belittling you and reducing your confidence to nothing. It's your dad. And so for me, I came to a very similar situation as Melissa, in that I had been, told by so many people, by my other family members, by friends, by family friends, etc., that this was a relationship that I was supposed to be in, and that there was no way for me to get out of it, and that I just had to suck it up and deal with it, because that was my dad and I should love him. And, and then you have biology going against you to basically tell you that that's your parent, and that that's what, you should be involved in. And for me, it was finally, I got to the point where I realized that I deserved more than to be told that I was worthless, and that I deserved more than to be manipulated and to orbit around somebody else, and that I also had a voice. And like in my situation, he was constantly stamping out my voice, because he didn't like whatever I had to say whenever I had to say it. It kind of didn't matter the topic. And so for me, it was finally finding my voice and standing my ground. And then that also was what led me down my whole spiritual path of really understanding myself. And so when I think about it with relationships, or with romantic
Michelle
relationships,
says I can relate to what Lindsay's saying totally. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I just want to give you some feedback.
That's good. Well, it's not good. I'm sorry that you can relate to that, Michelle, because it's a really, really painful thing. But I am very grateful for it now. It's been almost a decade since I was able to remove myself from that relationship. And I'm thankful, because it's taught me multiple things. It's taught me how to have a voice. It's taught me to never let anyone or anyone else's opinions be my guide for how I run my truth and how I run my story and my life.
It's so powerful.
It's super powerful. And like, it's still painful, and it's something that I work through in a lot of my relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic relationships, or like student or like my teacher relationships when I was in school, and things like that, with authority figures and stuff like that. But in fact, I was just speaking with someone yesterday who was talking to me about a divorce that she was going through with somebody who was narcissistic. And my father is,
oh wow,
my father
that's
is
a whole
narcissistic.
Other topic.
I know, right? But I was telling her, I was like, yeah, it's hard because you still get triggered even when you've worked through these things. And so for me, one of my things is my dad would buy me things to make me spend time with him. And when you're a kid and you're like an early teenager, you don't really realize what's happening. And then I slowly started figuring it out. And like now I have a hard time sometimes accepting gifts or accepting help or accepting things like that from others, because it makes me feel like they're going to expect something from me.
Right. There's attachment involved, you think. Right.
Exactly. And like I'm so fortunate that I've had a lot of friends and people in my life that have helped me kind of work through that. But
Lindsay, Amy says, Lindsay, look at you now, shining star, now helping us through your journey. Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is this stuff, I really believe you go through it so that you don't repeat these things in future relationships, but that you can also help others, and that others can learn from your story. And
yes,
it gives you perspective.
Right.
And like, I know that I can say with, I will say this, I used to be really concerned that I would be in an abusive marriage or an abusive relationship. I used to be really concerned that I would get divorced. I went through, as a kid, I went through 2 divorces. My parents got divorced, and then my dad and my stepmom got divorced. And I used to be really concerned with that. And, knock on wood, future, I don't know what my future holds, but I don't feel concerned about those things anymore, because I know I've learned and I know what to look for.
Right. And you know what you don't want.
Exactly.
And you know exactly where you stand.
Exactly. And I don't need somebody to fill those hurt pieces of me anymore, which is also like, I feel like that's a huge thing. And I will say too, when I very first was like really healing from my dad's stuff and like all of that trauma and stuff, like there was always a part of me that really wanted a guy to come in and like nurture me and heal me and make me feel like I could trust men and like things like that. And yes, I want somebody who will nurture me and be my partner and really care for me. But now I realize that I don't want somebody who's going to heal those parts. I've healed them myself. And
that's so
there's
true.
always more healing. But
right. So I thank both of you for divulging so much to help the group. These are really, really tough topics. I do have a couple. There's a lot of people saying a lot of things, but I do want to address some things. So, like Paulette said, my ex talks trash to his daughter and thinks he thinks he deserves respect, and I told him wrong. I told him he was wrong, maybe. And then there was another.
That reminds me a lot of my dad.
Yeah. And then Michelle was saying, yeah, I don't like accepting help either. And I think this is an important thing, even as Lindsay is saying it. And I know Lindsay because, we're working together and she's a really, really good friend of mine. So I kind of know, and I had a talk with the group too, where part of our growth, because we have done it so long by ourselves and had come to a point where we understood we cannot depend on anybody else but ourselves. Yeah. But we're going past that point because, part of the phase of this whole group is to understand that we are not alone. It is not about individuality. Yes, we had those times and those things happen to us in the past because we wanted to experience and understand that part. But we have always to remember that we're not just individuals. We're individuals in balance with the whole. So
yes, we are the whole.
We are the whole. So we have come to a point where we have to learn to not just accept help, but accept love, accept, and not just do that, but learn how to balance that in yourself. How to be softer, how to ask for help. But how do you do that when it's a habit not to do it, right? And so that's why I wanted to address this, because she's saying, I have such an issue, not you, Lindsay, but Michelle is saying, I have such an issue, accepting help. Well, if you want this man to come into your life that's going to want to give you everything, and you have an issue with not accepting it because you're so used to being strong and you're so used to doing it by yourself, then guess what? That's another relationship. That emperor, you're going to turn into a whole different relationship. There are these things that we need to work on, and there's a reason that there's perfect timing for it. There's a reason why these people or these relationships, these emperors, these kings, these queens, these empresses have not come in. Because the relationship that we're talking about, the relationship that we have wanted, for a long, long time and have been working at, if that person comes to us now and we're not ready, then we're going to turn it into a different relationship. Mm-hmm. And from our higher self knows us better and says, no, you're not doing that. So guess what? They just don't, they're right outside there. They're right there. They're right there until you finish. They're right there until you're ready.
Yes. And I would say, like, to Michelle and to others, now, and I think a lot
Can
of...
you say that again? Can you say that again? You froze for a second.
I just said that, with regards to accepting help and being okay with that, that's certainly something that I'm learning right now, that, as Cindy said, I think a lot of us in the group are learning as well. And for me, I've been asking myself, what is it that, like, why is that hard? And I think that, especially for people who have experienced abusive relationships before, a lot of the times those abusers make you dependent on them in some capacity, either emotionally, financially, like physically, whatever it is, they make you dependent. And so for me, that's the trigger. That's the fear, is that I'm going to become dependent on somebody. But if we know that we are whole, then we know that we're never actually going to be dependent on somebody. We're going to be accepting somebody in.
Right.
And so you can still survive on your own without that help. But that's not the point. The point is that you can also survive with the help.
Exactly. That's so true.
True.
That's so true.
And that's just, acknowledging your trigger. And again, going back to you, like, what's your true self?
Mm-hmm. And have you filled those holes? What are those issues? And those of you that have exes that you're still mad at, or you're like, they went off and did something else, and how come they weren't that way with me? Those are all things that you need to resolve. So Adrian Lonzo said, how can I stop self-abuse related to love addiction, Lindsay?
So what kind of self-abuse? Or self-abuse of getting in the wrong relationships?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Right.
Yeah, of getting in the wrong relationship.
No,
is that
no,
what?
They haven't said yes yet. They were. Okay. I'm looking at Sunflower Girl comment.
I want to go back to Paulette's comment at some point too, so we don't.
Yeah, so I kind of felt like
the things I saw myself.
Yeah. Loving someone who doesn't love you. So I'm going to let you take it from the psychology perspective and intuitive perspective, but I think all three of us can answer that from our each perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
So he says, Adrian says, loving someone who doesn't love you.
So I think that oftentimes is really about when you're loving somebody who doesn't love you, it comes from a place of lack of self-love, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I think is kind of number one to try to work on first, is having self-love, self-compassion, self-appreciation, because once we love ourselves and understand what we're really worth, then we're not going to go for those people who don't love us back, because we realize that that's not actually somebody who's loving us. That's just, again, it's filling a hole. So one of my therapists has told me before, he's like, you have a bowl of dirty water and you can sit there and keep drinking this dirty water and getting yourself sick, or you can, out of fear that you're never going to have somebody else or have clean water to drink from, or you can stop drinking that dirty water and have faith and trust that the clean water is going to be there for you, or just look to your right and see the bowl of clean water. I don't know why I'm saying bowl like it's an animal, but that's what I think about is, so, it's having trust.
Like Adrian said, how can I love myself? Well, that comes from your perspective. What's it going to take to love yourself? Have you asked that question? What is it that you feel that you're lacking? What is it that you feel makes you sad? What is it going to make you happy? Everybody has their perspective. Again, this is why this book is so important, because it goes into all those different layers of who we are from different perspectives. So that's like a big question. How can I love myself? How can you love yourself? Have you thought of it? Have you thought of what makes you sad and what makes you happy? Have you thought of how you want a relationship? How you thought of what makes you feel accomplished, feel driven, feel passionate, feel elated? Have you thought of those things? Because obviously you think you know what they are and you're finding them in different people, or you're trying to find them in different people. So what is that for you? Learning how to connect on your... So Chalk says, learning how to connect on a soul level when you're so used to shallow relationships. So no more dirty water for me, says Paulette.
Exactly. Clean water only.
Yes.
Right. Hi, Night Angel. So what about your perspective?
Melissa.
I wanted to call her Sparkle.
Oh,
the
sorry.
other one.
Sorry.
The other
Sparkle.
one.
Oh, yeah.
The other Sparkle's name, but I was like, I had to stop. When I stop, it's because I'm like, that one's coming out.
Again, it comes down to self-love. And just as Lindsay said, you've got to complete and make yourself whole before you look outside to loving someone else in a relationship. Because, first of all, if you don't know how to love yourself, if you don't know how to spend time with yourself, how can you expect someone else to?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's such a true statement.
Right.
I mean, that's just how I look at it. I mean, those are the two questions you have to ask yourself. So you want to make sure that you know how to love yourself. Do you like pretty flowers? Do you like going out to have dinner at a certain restaurant? Would you do that, for yourself? Take yourself on a date and just sit there and have dinner and just, sometimes I would just eat and read a book or just enjoy that time with myself.
So
is very important.
Right. So Adrian says, I've been looking for love, but find ladies who end up not loving me. So the whole point is, if you don't even love you,
yes,
then you resonate at that, and that's what you bring in. So of course they don't love you. I know that sounds harsh, but like attracts like, right? So if your perception is, I don't even love me, I don't even know how to love me, I don't even know what that is, then of course you're going to introduce a lady into your life that's going to say, well, I don't know what that is, and I don't really love you either.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I heard a really good quote the other day that I think I'm going to butcher, but it was a Sartre quote, like the philosopher. And it was something like, if you're alone if you feel lonely when you're alone, then you're in bad company. And part of it is, it's learning to know yourself and loving who you are. And I think it's also important for us to say that, I could imagine if you were listening to us right now, you might say, well, I can't have any relationships then because I'm not there yet. And I think that going back to something Cindy said a little while ago is that none of these relationships are a waste. You're learning yourself through relationships oftentimes, and you're learning to love yourself through those relationships. So if I were Adrienne, what I would do is I would think about all of those different relationships and girls that I had drawn into my life that didn't love me. And I would think about, well, they must have liked something about me. What did they like about me? What do I like about me? And then what was it that I didn't like about them? Because I guarantee if those girls aren't loving you and aren't liking you, there's something you don't like about them either.
Oh, yeah, because you're sitting there thinking, well, I love them, but do you really? Because if love makes you happy and they're not making you happy, then that's not really loving them.
Exactly.
Or you don't really love them. You're like
a reflection of you. What is it about you that you don't like?
That's what Lindsay was getting to.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
You've got
it's
to
like
look at
what,
that as well,
and the thing is this always fascinates me. No, it fascinates me when people say, I so love that person. And when I ask them, this is way back in the day, friends, I would ask them, well, why do you love, how does that person make me feel? Oh, well, they never call and I'm always mad and blah, 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 blah. I mean, like when they really thought about it, that wasn't making them happy. Loving that person was not making them happy. So they weren't really in love. They weren't really, and I'm going from the place that they were in love with being loved, but I'm coming from a place where they were about the emotion of it. We all know that love comes in many forms, but it's about, since we were talking about the emotion of it, I'm like, you're not a really happy person, and that person's always making you cry. And so how is that love? How's that a good relationship? How is that? I don't get it, right?
Right. And it might be a kind of love, but is it the love that you want?
Right.
Like, is that really what you want for the rest of your life? Or as your big love?
So Adrienne says, faithfulness and loyalty are my values, and I've been hurt so many times, cheated, that now I doubt myself. Because maybe you need to love yourself first. If you keep doing this in relationships, sounds like to me that each of your relationships, this baffles me too. So, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? And so, you keep going to these relationships, which you just said, and they've all been not faithful, and they've all been not loyal, and they've all cheated. But you keep going into these relationships thinking that it's going to change. So if the vibration or the energy doesn't change, then you're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So maybe you need to back it off for just a little bit. You're not going to die. It's going to be okay if you're alone. And maybe you need to see what that's about first.
Right. So, and what Cindy is saying with that is changing your vibration, because you're the only thing that you can actually change, right? So something else that I've always told myself from a very young age, and I think it's the most true thing that I know, is that there's only one person in this world that you're stuck with, and that's you. There's only one person that's going to be there to the very last moment, and that's you. So if you don't know you, and if you don't feel good about you, and feeling good about you means knowing all of those dark parts of yourself and accepting them, and, not necessarily saying like, I love the fact that I can, I don't know, like be flaky or something like that, but saying, yeah, I can be flaky sometimes, and that's something that I'm working with, or that I can deal with. That's just an example of like a negative trait, but like knowing all of those pieces and accepting all of those pieces, because that's what you want your true partner to do, right? Is you want them to accept everything about you.
Right. So I have one last question, and then I think what we're going to do is take a little break. Just like a 10-minute break. I have been writing. The teacher is in form. So I need to like stand up and change the vibration. But after we answer these questions. So my one question to you ladies and myself is, What is the first step, if you can think about back to that? What is the first step that you took to self-love? If you think about the space that you were in where you were just like, I don't know what to do next, and I can't believe this has happened, and all of this is, around me, and what do I do? Right? So when you finally discovered, maybe you weren't able to voice it, but you discovered that it was self-love. What was that for you? What step did you take?
My first step was, first of all, standing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first step in this whole journey, has been the fact that I stood up for myself and I said no to the no more of the being on that ride. I want off. No, you're not coming back. No, I'm not accepting that.
Right.
So that was my first step.
That was your self-love. When you stood up and when you recognized and you stood up and you said no more.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And what about you, Lindsay?
I giggled because that's exactly what mine was too. It was when I finally said no to my dad. And I said, nope, I love you. I hope you get help one day. I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
And it was when I stood up for myself and stopped listening to every should that was around me. And I knew what was true for me. And I stood up for myself and said, no, that's my same moment.
Yeah. I think that for myself, it's probably the same. I've been in, I'm more of a, haven't gotten myself in those types of, like, I'm not going to say ever, because there were times where maybe I was dating, or maybe, friends, that would happen. But I'm trying to think of like really, really profound moments that had crushed me. And I think when I stood up on that day and said, you know what, I'm better than this, I'm bigger than this, and no, it's not going to happen. So I kind of feel like it's the same, even though they may have been different situations, but they're like, that's the same. When I stood up and understood, that was like my first self-love, just to understand,
that boundary.
I've always kind of had boundaries. But, they can get gray. They can, you can sort of say, well, I didn't really do it that way, but yeah, it's true. So I think standing up for yourself and understanding, no more, I'm not going to do this. No, I'm not going to allow this person to do this to me. No, I'm not going to listen to anybody else. I'm going to listen to me. I'm going to see what happens with me. So I'm a soul with a body, so I have love for a wonderful woman. I have faith she will appear in the right moment. Mm-hmm. So a woman will appear. Yeah. But again, unless you change your vibration, unless you change the process of what's going on within you. Like I said, this was just our first step. Our first step was just to take note, to say no and stand up for who we are. And even though we didn't realize who that was at the time, right? I didn't know who I was at the time. You didn't know who you were at the time. Melissa didn't know who she was at the time, but we knew no more. No. Right? So that was just the first step, is to acknowledge that. And then spend some time with yourself and say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. So that's got to change. And then sort of discovering what that is for you. Right?
I think with that too, it's like putting yourself first, finally. You know? Because
that's a great way to say it.
Because like I'm reminded,
I think most of us can relate to that. Going first for the first time. Like we actually go first, right? Because there's a lot of people here who give and give and give and give and give, and they've been put to the side. That's this group. This group knows how to love others unconditionally, but to actually love yourself unconditionally. So to put yourself first for once, right?
That was
Yes.
probably, that's like, that's also part of what the no is really, like, that's the root of the no, right? The saying no. I mean, I was thinking about, like, when I was 12 and went through my second parent divorce, I told myself, or I remember asking my parents if I could go to therapy. And for me, that was me saying, this is really messed up and I'm not going to be dealing with any of y'all anymore.
Right.
I need to come first, finally.
Right.
And it was me taking care of myself, you know?
And that takes a lot. That takes a lot.
It takes a whole lot.
Especially at your age. It takes a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. So, this has been a really, really good topic. This is about dating and relationships. So I finally realized some people were putting their projections onto me. I learned to be selfish from others. I'm unselfish. I had to learn. Yes, I had to learn love means saying no to. Yes. So we must be tender with our hearts and souls. We did the best we knew. Some things are what they are, and some things have nothing to do with our choices. No, that's not true. We always have a choice.
Depends on, I guess, like your perspective of what choice is, right?
Yeah, because we always have a choice. But I know it may feel like you don't have a choice. Like, I understand what I'm saying when I say you always have a choice. You could be stuck against the wall and you have nowhere to go and blah, blah, blah. But you still always have a choice. You still always have a choice. And it is important for everybody to understand that you have your choices. You are powerful. You mean to God, to source, to spirit, to angels, to your loved ones. You mean just as much as everyone. Like, all of us mean the same. And so we all have these choices, right? I had to forgive myself for allowing them to enter my head, then found the strength I already had. Exactly. Thank you for saying it that way, Kim. You have the strength within you already.
Exactly.
And that's what self-discovery is going to help with as well, is understanding, do I love myself enough? Would I give myself the same pass that I give everybody else?
That's a huge statement right there.
Yeah. Would I do that? That's a big thing. So, exactly. She said, haha, here, kitty, kitty. So, all right. So, David, we're going to take a break about 10 minutes. I do have to potty. So, to forgive means I ain't going to use the past against you. Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So
that's for
David,
yourself too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. It was for you. You're not hurting anybody by not forgiving them, except for you, because you're the one holding on to that. They can move on with their lives. That's your perspective. So, anyway, David, can you count us down? We're gonna go for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be back. This is a great discussion. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, we're back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying and listening to the break. And so I'm looking down here at your comments. I apologize for not looking up the whole time. So we had a really, really good discussion before we went on break. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cindy. I am the modern day spiritual advisor. I use multiple modalities to help you on your path. I am also the author of my upcoming book series, Concepts Create Reality. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We are having dating and relationship advice chat. We're just sort of all chatting. We have the wonderful, beautiful Sparkletini diva herself. And then next to her, we have Lindsay. So I'm going to let Sparkletini say hello to you guys, and then I'll let Lindsay introduce herself. Hi, Sparkles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miss Diva Sparkles, Sparkletini, Sparkletitas. You can call me any sparkles that you would like. Just don't call me the B word because it is not nice. But anyway, I am a Reiki practitioner, intuitive empath, and life coach, among several other modalities that I have.
Mm-hmm. You do.
I am working on. So thank you again, Cindy, for allowing me to be out here and for us having this discussion. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for being so open to the group and giving of yourself. And good luck tomorrow. She is going to be a Reiki master.
Yay!
So, yay, congratulations. All right. Next to her is the fabulous Lindsay. Lindsay is a personality psychologist. So I will let her explain what she does and who she is.
Yeah, so I'm a personality psychologist. I'm not a therapist, but I'm a psychology researcher, and I research how we express ourselves through our environments, and then also how our relationships are affected by our personalities and the environments that we live within. Mm-hmm. And then I've been a part of our soul group since the beginning.
Gosh. Yeah, since the beginning.
Same with Melissa. Yes. We've been here from the start. So.
Yeah. So you would see her doing the comment, them doing the comment. Now I'm like, I brought them in. So I'm so privileged and happy to have you guys here. Thank you so much for sharing of your talents, your gifts, and yourselves. And I was telling Sparkletini and Lindsay that it's hard to come on air and say such personal things about yourself, knowing that you're going to help others, but it's still hard. So Thank you guys for giving of yourselves that way. So I see that some of you guys are like trying to do a meetup. Good for you.
Awesome.
We're going to try to have this retreat in September, but if not, definitely October, but in September. So
yes,
then we can all meet. But I'm telling y'all right now, I'm locking my door. Y'all can't come in. Y'all cannot come in when I stay overnight. Wherever the resort is, where we go, y'all can't come in. I'm not even going to let you know where it's at. Okay, so looking back at the comments during break, Lindsay and Sparkletini and I were looking, and then it just sort of helped me understand with all the comments. Yeah, so I'm going to have a retreat for your Indigo Path for all of the soul group. So what I was saying is, looking back on the comments, we were talking about this, and what I'm gathering is there are a lot of you that are in this space that that I remember, that Sparkletini remembers, that Lindsay remembers. Now, for Lindsay, it wasn't in a romantic relationship, but it still was a relationship, and it really has a lot to do with all aspects of our life. So what I was seeing and what I'm feeling is there are a lot of you that are past the point of, okay, that person is gone. They're either divorced or they've died or, we've broken up or whatever. And that person is gone from you. Your life has changed. And I remember being at that point where I was looking at my life in observance, and I was like, I can't curse, but how the heck did I get from here in this life to here? Like, I had a nice life. I had this life, and now it's gone. And so I was asking Sparkletini that same point where she got to that, and then Lindsay, and I was saying, what did you do in those moments to try to deal with the emotional separation of that other life that you had in your world? What did you do? How did you deal with all of that? Right? When that person is no longer in your life for whatever reason, what were the things that you did for yourself to understand that, oh my God, that's not my life anymore. Now my life is. Now, I remember this too. I can remember being at the grocery store and picking up groceries and not knowing what to pick up because I was so used to picking up groceries for my family, right? For my husband or for my fiance or for my daughter or whatever, and being at the grocery store and those not being around and thinking, well, I'm getting groceries for myself, but I don't even know what I want. Right? It's like that type of shock that you're in, that you're like,
you feel lost.
You feel so lost. So how did you, men live the same life, women live many different lives? Not so true, Ready 500. You just don't talk about it much. So what did you guys do at those points to help you move forward? So if you want to begin first, Melissa, if you can remember.
Yeah, because this was many, many years ago, so I had to go through the process to remember. However, this didn't occur for me right then, where I got to that point where it was like, okay, what am I going to do now? My first question for me was, who am I? So I went through that process first, and then I got to a point where I realized that I wanted to be forgiving to him, but I also needed to forgive myself for my part in the entire relationship, because it wasn't all him. I had my own things that was going on as well, because pretty much I was just as broken as he was, just in a different way.
And that's the toughest thing, to forgive yourself.
Hard.
That's
Hard.
so hard, because you have all those questions. How did I let this happen?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what I was thinking, I'm smart, how did I get into that situation where it got to a point where it was abusive, and I was, and all of this stuff was going on, and why did I stay so long, and all of this going through my mind. And I had to just forgive myself for that, because I didn't know any better at that time. And yes, I did play a part in everything that happened. I could have done a whole bunch of other stuff. I didn't. So I had to forgive all of that. And still, to this day, there's still a few things that I look back on, and it's gotten really to this point now because it's been over about 12 years, but it's taken this long for me to not get angry over the things that happened and to get angry at myself for the things that happened.
So I'm going to interrupt you just a second because this brings up a good point. Night Angel saying the first time around, my small children are what really motivated me, had to act quickly, not fall apart because I wouldn't do any good to them as their mom. And that's kind of what you had said that you were done. But I'm talking about after that part, because eventually you will.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't think you're not, then you haven't really dealt with it and you've just pretty much buried it. If you have not had that point where you're like, what the happened?
Yeah.
If you have not had that shock of like, oh my gosh, this is really over, or for whatever reason, many of you have many different reasons, but I'm talking about that point.
Well,
and she did the same thing.
It took me a long time to get there because at that point I had a 2-year-old son. And so I wasn't thinking about all of that at that time. It was like, I don't know.
You were in survival mode, probably.
Right.
I was in survival mode. I was not even thinking about any of that. And so it took a while for me to get to that point of, what did happen? What went wrong? Where did I go wrong? Could I have done that better? Maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done that. And then I had to really get to that point of forgiveness. And first, it was easier to forgive him. It was much harder.
That's this whole group. We're so we know how to forgive others, but to forgive ourselves.
To own up to me, to what I did, what my part in that whole entire scenario that happened was.
Right.
And give up that victim mentality of I was the victim the whole time. And that wasn't true. That wasn't true. So I had to really dig deep and rip that Band-Aid off and really take a look at me and why I was there, what my part was, and own up to the fact that I was just as broken as it was.
Right. She said love did blind you. Love did not blind her. She had choices. Love didn't blind me. I had choices.
No. So it wasn't being love is blind. It's more like I was in that process of I saw his potential and I wanted that. Yet he wasn't ready to give me that.
Yeah,
he
thank you.
Give me his potential. Yeah. He wasn't at that point. So, yes, I had a choice. I could have left. I could have done a whole lot of things. But still, because I didn't make those choices, I didn't make those decisions, I still had a part that I played. And so, yes, I still had to forgive myself for that. Love is blind is an excuse. It just is, because that says that I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I didn't realize I didn't know what I was doing, or I knew what I was doing at the time. But yeah, I did. There were a lot of choices. I could have done a lot of things, and I could have done things differently. But here I am, and still had to forgive myself for my part.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just smiling because the Ready 500 said I was abused by a Gemini. Not
my husband, my ex-husband was a Gemini. He was a Gemini, or is a Gemini.
Okay, so what about you, Lindsay?
Well, something that I keep thinking about too as we're talking is that, when we're talking about that, we all have these roles that we're playing, and that we have to forgive ourselves for parts of it. So, like, the other part to that, though, is that it's more like accepting what it was that you were wanting to experience.
Right.
If we take like a big step back and look at the big picture and stop looking at, you know, kind of the human story of it, and we look at the spirit side of it, like Cindy is always talking about, you're making these choices. We're here to be certain aspects, right? And to experience certain things. So
Right.
if you think of it as that way too, of like, you're having to forgive yourself for your role in that, it's another way to say that is you're having to accept the fact that you chose that was an experience that you wanted to experience. And so, like, I am thinking of two different scenarios in my life, one with my dad and that whole abusive relationship, but in another relationship that I was in that wasn't specifically a romantic relationship, but it just wasn't a good idea. And I knew it from the beginning, but I knew it for years that wasn't the situation that I should be putting myself in. But it wasn't until, you know, it totally crashed and burned. And then
Michelle says I didn't choose a narcissist for a relative. You actually did.
Exactly. Well,
you did.
So
you did it before you came, but yes, you did.
Yeah. So if we go to that situation, then I'll flip.
Oh, you froze. Say that again. If we go to that situation again, because you froze.
If we go back to that situation with my dad, right? So let's talk about that for a second, of us not thinking that we chose the relatives that we have. I think that part of why I'm saying part of this is accepting the aspects that we wanted to experience in this life, because when we say that we've made that choice, it is sounding like we're blaming ourselves, or like the three of us talking are blaming you for putting yourself in that bad situation, etc. That's not what it is. It's not about blame, and it's not about saying that you made the wrong choice or made a bad choice. None of that is true. It's about that you set in motion that was the experience that you wanted to experience when you came to this life. And you wanted to experience that until you didn't want to experience it anymore.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Yes.
And that was why when we were talking earlier about what was the first step to self-love, the first step to self-love was saying, nope, I'm done with that aspect.
Right. So becoming aware that you have finished.
Exactly. Right? Because I'm sure in this moment right now, all of us, all three of us on this screen and all of us in this chat and all of the replayers, we can all sit there and come up with at least 5 to 10 things that we're doing in our lives right now that are maybe not the best things for ourselves, right? But they're what we're choosing to experience right now. And they may be what we choose to experience till the day we die, or they may be something that we eventually say, I'm done. And so at some point, when we do those things that hurt us, and we allow those things in that hurt us, a huge step in self-love after saying no to that is then forgiving that thing or person that hurt us, but then also forgiving ourselves for that experience that we put ourselves through. So
and that's why Lindsay and I were saying earlier, that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing, to forgive yourself, to understand that you wanted this. And so why did you want this? Why did you put yourself in this situation, right? So you have to forgive yourself for that. You have to forgive yourself and understand. When you understand how much you experience to learn from that other person reflecting you, right? How much, whether it's your family member, your friends, your lover, your partner, your whatever. When you understand that part of it, then you can begin. I'm not going to say that you can do it easily, but you can begin to forgive yourself.
Exactly. And like that is something that I still think about and deal with. Like even with, I mean, when I have to sit there and accept the fact that I let my relationship with my abusive father go as long as I did. You know, like I can sit there and I can look and say, well, I was 5 or I was 10 or I was 15. Like I didn't have a choice. No, I always had a choice, because there was still the choice within me that was deciding to not let that beat me down, not let that jade me, not let that whatever, even when I couldn't get myself physically out of that situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I still have to accept that I don't have a relationship with my dad, and that's my choice.
Right.
That's not his.
That's so
mine.
I want to comment on Carrie. Carrie says, I'm really hoping and praying for a happily ever after for my family. I never wanted my girls to have to deal with a broken family. So I know this is going to sound harsh, Carrie, but really hoping and praying for a happily ever after. What are you doing to make sure that that happens? Because that's something that obviously you're wanting to experience. So it's time to stop blaming people. It's time to stop saying it was there, it's them, it's blah, blah, blah. You need to take responsibility for your actions in this. So what are you going to do next to make sure, or what are you doing now to make sure that you draw in the right person? What are you going to do now to make sure that you get that happily ever after? Because obviously your heart, mind, and soul desire that. So that is something that you're wanting. What are you doing to make that happen?
And your first step is by wanting it, you know, by wanting that next piece. So that's huge. That's really huge. And I think going back to what we started originally talking about of what did you do to get through those things? I think one thing is acknowledging every single successful step you take.
Absolutely.
Because that's what propels you to keep moving too. You have to acknowledge and be appreciative and like give yourself a pat on the back for the fact that you want the happy ending. Some people don't ever even get to that stage.
Right. That's so true, Lindsay. That's so true.
So yeah, take pride in those positive steps forward. The fact that, like, say Adrian was talking about all of these bad relationships that he was seeing and that he doesn't want that. The fact that he could see that, the fact that he can pinpoint that those are not aspects that he wants, that's huge. That's a huge, huge, huge step.
So Night Angel says, Cindy, that is exactly what I'm trying to figure out for myself now. What I need to do. It's not easy. No, it's not easy. But it's there. It's there. If you observe, if you take a look and you say, I did like this part, but I'm taking ownership in these situations. I did this, therefore it caused that. And so I know I don't want to do that, but why did I do that? I did that because of blah, 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 right? And so that's all a part of self-discovery. That's all a part of you discovering yourself and you filling those holes and you understanding that you aren't broken. You never were. None of us are. We aren't. I've said this before. I've said it in my book. I'm going to say it again. If we are part of Source, God, oneness, whatever you want to call that being, and that being is pure, unconditional, and perfect love. It's a perfect being. And we are part of that. How can that being make something broken? That being cannot. It's impossible. So we're not broken.
Perfect.
Always have been, always will be. Perfect. You've made yourself forget your wholeness because you wanted to experience love physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in the physical, from those particular aspects. Now, it's about you learning what those aspects are for you. It's about you learning how you want to be loved and how you want to love in this world, right?
And not judging it.
No, don't judge it. You incorporate who you are. Don't try to be something you're not. Don't try. So we have some people like to say dark side, light side, right? Everybody has this dark side and then the light side. And some people think, well, if I'm in the light, I can't have the dark side. That's a bunch of crap. It's whole. It's who you are. It's why you made yourself that way. why. That's what you came here to do. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to understand why, and then experience and express those things. Why? It's different for everybody. That's why I can't just tell you your purpose when I talk to you as a group, because each one of you on the group level, we have certain purpose, but we also have our individual purpose.
Yes.
And for each and every one of you, it's different. And I wouldn't know that until we start talking. I wouldn't know what that is for you until we start talking. Right? Hi.
And those aspects and purposes can shift throughout our life as well.
Absolutely.
Because it's all choice. So
exactly.
You always have the choice.
I explain this in my book about how you can step into and out of different aspects of you, how you can be your moon and how you can be your sun and how you can be your rising and how you can be, your Venus at some points when some people, but you'll know because the person or the thing or the situation, they come to mirror you. They come to give you a reflection of who you are. So if that person is bringing out that certain something in you, then that is something that you are stepping into and trying to experience. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes, the more you do that, it's hard for me to even bring a man around my kids. I can't bring myself to do it. You probably aren't even at that point where you should. When you find yourself doing more, make others happy, and not yourself, is when you're not being true. I think stepping into different aspects of yourself is extremely difficult for people that deny who they are to begin with. No, it's not difficult. It's just, so they'll be stepping into that, and then things and situations will be happening, and then they won't understand, or because they've chosen to look another way. But I don't think it's difficult at all. Study a man first. Look how he treats his mom. That's how you know what kind of man he is. Okay. Maybe.
I've heard that.
How do you help those people? Kiko, makes perfect sense. So, I'm sorry, what were you saying, Melissa?
I was reading these, a lot of these comments, especially Kiko. He has a lot to say.
Yeah, he's trying to find the woman that's the love of his life.
Yes. Because he's saying, I can't choose the first person who I meet and get to know them more. I will meet other ones as well. I don't want to get screwed again.
Right.
Well, that right there is kind of...
so the question you should be asking, right, is why are you attracting that?
And what is it that you think you're going to get screwed over with?
Right.
And why?
Why?
Why is that something that's bothering? Like, what's the importance behind that? And why would you put yourself in that situation? Or what would you be doing to attract that to you?
Yeah.
Right.
Because first of all, that fear is what you're going to attract, because that's what you're giving the energy to.
Mm-hmm. Paulette says, I disagree with the mom thing. Yeah, so if I just said the person, because if I was just explaining that people come in and reflect you. So if you're like his mother, then yes, that will work. But if you're not like his mother, then the reflection is going to be what they're reflecting you. So what are those things for you?
You're making the assumption that his mom is a great person. That
True.
You want
Thank you for saying that. I didn't even think about that
model that relationship. That relationship that he may have with his mom may not be one that you want at all. So, like, even if it's, obviously nobody wants like a mother. Well, most people don't want a mother-parent kind of kid relationship with their partner, but you don't know that relationship's a quality one. I would not want anyone to like judge me based on how I treated certain family members.
No, I'm laughing because Ready 500 says I'm not like my mom. They're still talking about this mom comment. So Sunflower says it sounds like you need. She's talking to Kiko. It sounds like you need to have a backup just in case it doesn't work. And he said, yes, Sunflower. And so if you need a backup, just in case it doesn't work out, then what do you think you're attracting? You're going to have a girl who's going to have a backup just in case it doesn't work out.
You're both never going to invest fully.
Nope.
That's right.
So something that I think is really important to do when you're thinking about your partner and like who it is that you actually want to attract in is like, I write about it. So what I've done is I meditate and then I write. And for me, that's how I can express myself and how I can formulate my thoughts. But write about not just like the specific traits, that they're smart or they're funny or whatever. Like, think about what are those values that person has. That's your person that you actually want to spend your life with. What is it? What do they do with you? How do they emotionally support you? Or how do they interact with you? How do you support them? How do you interact with them? What is it that you guys make each other feel? And I have done that before. And then I go back and I look back at it every few months and I see, okay, does this still resonate with me? Is this still the person that I want to call in? And I know Cindy has talked before too about like writing out what is your typical day like with that person. Like,
that's when you're trying to manifest. When you're ready and you're trying to manifest that. That's what I work with clients with. When you're ready and you're trying to manifest that, that's what I want you to see. What is that day like when you wake up? So you woke up, you have the love of your life. How does that look? How does that feel? What does that look like for you? What does that feel like? What does your day start as? Do you get coffee? Do they get coffee? Do you do tea? What do you do? Are they there? Is it someone that you're wanting line next to you? Is it someone that's already at work? Is it someone that lives in another house? What does that feel like to you? Right?
Yeah. And I guess like
reading a lot of these comments. Oh, excuse me, Lindsay.
Go for it.
I apologize. One thing that just came to mind about the reason why it has taken me so long to even consider the fact that I want to be with someone else or I want to have a partner now at this time in my life. It took me such a long time was because I didn't want to take that bitterness that I felt with my
exactly. That's what's taken me too
into.
I didn't want to bring baggage. I didn't want to bring baggage.
Yeah, exactly. I think I
think that's what's taken you so long, Lindsay, too.
Yeah, it is. It is
years to really get that down and to understand who I am and what I'm about, what I want. And now I feel like I am ready.
Yeah.
5 years ago, I was getting there, but not quite.
Not even 6 months ago, Sparkletini.
Yeah. So
I mean, let's just bring it way up front. Not even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Not even for me. Not even.
Adrian says he's single, Lindsay. He's talking to you. He said, Lindsay, I'm single. Hint, hint.
Hint, hint.
So, but that was what was coming to mind as, I was reading his comments and then that just popped up,
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that because I think even Lindsay being single has done the same thing. She wants to make sure that she is cleared and she's worked on her life and she's filled her holes and she's done that so that's a different relationship so that she's ready now,
Right. Exactly. And I mean, like, so I'm not necessarily typical in a lot of ways in the sense that I have a really, like, I don't have a strong desire to just date to date. And I think a large part of where that is coming from in me, at least at this phase of my life, is that I have known a couple of things. Like, I know that I don't want to experience somebody in that way just to work through my own issues. I want to come to somebody when I'm done.
Whole.
And when
I know.
Whole. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
it's funny because that's what I did with like, well, you guys know I'm goal oriented. So that's what I was like, okay, until this happens, it's not going to happen. You know, I mean,
right, exactly.
That may not be the right thing, but that's the thing I did.
Right. And I've felt ready for quite a while now, but I also know that what I want is I want that forever relationship. I don't want just I'm not in a space for me where I know that I don't want just a quick kind of thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well, myself as well. The
right.
Sparkletini as well.
Yes, I'm not looking for
I've already had dating. I've already had like all of that.
Exactly.
It's not like I'm opposed to dating. I'm just at a point where
no, I'm not either.
I'm kind of past that. You know,
right.
I already know what I want. So,
exactly. I mean, I could get out there if I want to and play around and do.
I got my book. Shoot, I don't have to get out there. I got a book. I got like contacts.
That's not what I'm looking for. Or that's
the truth is. Exactly. The truth is, any one of us on this channel right now, any one of us could go out tonight and get somebody and be.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth.
Done. Let's do that.
It would fill the need for the moment, but then you'd be back to, and then you have something else you need to clear. So
exactly, I don't want somebody else's energy on me that I don't know where they came from. Anyways.
That's what she said.
Sorry. I have a very okay. So I did want to get to what's her name? Hold on. 44. Who said 44? Cindy got a little black book. Pass it on. Shoot, I ain't passing that on. Y'all wouldn't be able to handle them.
Ask you a question, Cindy.
That's what it was. Cindy, do you believe in being friends? Give me just a second because I wanted to answer Nicole's first. Cindy, do you believe in being friends first and taking things slow? So I believe. Let me make sure I say this right. So as an Aquarius, as an Aquarius and a Gemini, I have to have a best friend in a relationship. They have to be my best friend. So it's no other way. But saying that doesn't mean that you'd have to take it slow either. Because I'll tell you this. My normal thing would probably be to take it a little slower. But my husband and I met. We didn't spend a day apart unless with the military. And then 6 months later, we were married, and then we were married for 20 years. So, like, the day I met him, I knew, and the day he met me, he knew. We didn't tell each other that because we didn't want to scare each other, but it was just a natural thing. It wasn't this having to think about, am I supposed to? Am I not supposed to have sex? Am I supposed to have sex? It just was natural. So, but the thing is yes, they always have to be my friend. So, but don't like, be so narrow-minded and think, well, it's got to be in a year and I got to take it slow. So for me, if you're thinking that you have to take it too slow, then you're not the guy for me. You're just not the guy for me. If you're thinking you have to take it really fast, then you're not the guy for me. The guy for me isn't going to think about it. It's just going to be what it is. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah. It depends on what your flow is. If your flow is to go really slow, then sure. I mean, now, am I going to meet someone today and in a week say, okay, yeah, let's go get married? Probably not.
Right.
With me I'm
telling you, I have this thing where I can see. I might look at it and be like, all right, let's just go get married because we know we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. Just that simple. Like, I have like no BS about it. It just is what it is. And if you're anything different than that, then you're not in my vibration.
Right.
Just that.
And I'm somewhere between the two of you because whoever I'm with has to be my friend in the sense that I want to be with my best friend that's who I want my partner
Well, yeah,
to be.
absolutely.
So,
They have to be my best friend.
So he has to be my best friend no matter what, right? And I know that I could make my best friend in a day,
But
or I could
exactly,
make my best friend over several months. And
because
so
that's the way it was with my first husband. Even my fiance. That's what it was. It was like that was your best friend. Like
exactly.
we may have not had a lot of time together prior to, but we just knew that we were best friends. Like it was somebody that you've always known.
Right.
And it just went from there.
And
right?
I think for me, at least, I think it's different for everyone, truthfully. But for me, I feel like because I know myself so well now and I know what I want.
That's the key though, Lindsay.
That's
it's
where I
because
feel
you
comfortable
know yourself
with
so
it.
much. It's
exactly.
because you know yourself so well. That's what I'm talking about. My way is not the same way as maybe the group's way. But I know myself enough. Then I know exactly what I want and when it's there.
Exactly.
I'll just know.
Me too.
Because I've done it twice before, 3 times before. I've done it twice before. I just knew. So that's going to happen with me again. Right?
And that's
I know myself enough that's the way it happens.
Right. And that's how I feel too. I know enough about what triggers me. I trust myself on my decisions. I know when something feels wrong and when I'm making the wrong decision. And so, like, of course, we all make mistakes. Like, and I'm not saying that I'm not infallible in any way, shape, or form, but I trust myself enough to know when the timing is right with the right person.
Doesn't research studies show that men and women know within the first few minutes if they want to marry the person? I can tell you from experience, yes. Because after we did that, after we'd gotten married and after we had talked about that, or after we were engaged and we had talked about that, he said, I knew I was a few minutes after. And I said the same thing. I knew exactly when I met you that's who you were. But we both said we didn't want to scare each other. So we didn't say anything, but we knew.
And I think the problem with I was shaking my head with the research just because it's like
research is so
it's so subjective in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
And it makes the assumption that all of those relationships were relationships that were going to stay relationships. Right. And so we don't really know. Because all of us in this room also have been in relationships that didn't sustain, right? So we may have known in that moment that person was the person we were going to be in a relationship with, but they didn't last. Does that make it any more invalid?
No, it doesn't.
We knew that initially?
No,
exactly. And vice versa, like lasting relationships, you also don't always know in that instant, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But trust your gut. That's, I think, when you're lined up, that's the key, right? Is when you're calibrated and you know your true self.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Carrie. Carrie says our vibes aren't that bad, Cindy. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I can only speak for myself. And for myself, and then the way that Lindsay said is I know myself enough, and I know what that feeling is when it's my husband. So I know myself. So when that person comes before me, I kind of have this thing where I kind of know where I'm going to be like, well, let's just go get married because if that's what you need or that's what you want, and it's going to be kind of just relaxed because that's just kind of how it is. And
the thing that Cindy is saying is that's Cindy. That's Cindy's personality. That's Cindy's resonance. That let's say
for me,
I kind of have a similar feel, but let's just say the example of somebody else. Like somebody else may say that, I know within 6 months if this is somebody that I want to keep interacting with, or I know usually within like 10 dates if this is somebody who, or I need to have experiences where I go on trips with them, or I meet their family, or I, whatever. All of us have different criteria for that, and nothing is right or wrong.
No, it's not. It's whoever it is for you.
Exactly.
It's whatever you're vibrating at. It's what you're attracting.
And it's knowing that sort of test for be for you, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if I'm somebody that I know I have to live with somebody to be able to know if I could marry him, then that's what's true for me. If I'm somebody who I have to feel on my gut level when I first meet him, then that's what's true for me, right?
Right. Right.
And there's no right or wrong.
No. I knew I shouldn't have married my second ex-husband, but I did it anyway because you wanted to experience it.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it because that's what you wanted to experience. So my question then is, why did you accept the proposals? Oh, she's talking to Michelle. Vibrations or thoughts, Cindy? So yeah, it's a form, sure. Vibrations are all many things. Carrie, the best thing to do is to let go from the aftermath. So, Kiko, you have a contradiction. You want to be in a relationship and you want to be married and you want to have this strong relationship, but you're worried about how a ring looks on your finger. So you have some contradiction going on. I think you need to be,
I saw that too.
first of all, I think you need to be truthful with yourself. I think you need to be okay with yourself. And maybe that's just that little part that's you getting over so that person can come in, you know? Because like people ask me all the time, are you going to get married again? And my answer is whatever the person that I love, whatever they want and need, it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't, because I've done both, you know, so it really doesn't. If that person needs the marriage thing, then yeah, of course. If it's sacred to them and I love them, then of course I'm going to want to do it for them. But, you know, if they have a different understanding, then that as well. Whatever, it's just going to sort of flow. That's the thing. You can be at this point before the person comes in and you're like, well, I want this type of person and I'm not going to have this type of person and I blah, 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 blah. And you can have all these things. And I've already moved past that where I'm like, it's just going to happen the way it's going to happen because I already know myself. So I'm not even guessing about all that stuff. I'm just waiting to experience it. I'm not even waiting. I just know that when it happens, I'm going to experience it. And it is going to be one of the most beautiful, glorious, greatest things ever. Is it going to, and it's not going to take away from the other two that I had. It's just going to be different because I've already mastered that. Now I'm going to master something else. Right?
That's interesting. That's actually how I feel too, is that I want a long-term partner. I want a partner for the rest of my life. Do I have to have the marriage label? No. It just depends. No. Like, I'm open to it happening either way or any way.
Exactly.
And I feel the same with children. It's like, do I need them? No. But if that's something that comes into my path, yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great way to put that, Lindsay, about children. I want
a 5-carat diamond, so...
To go with your tiara.
Of course, gotta sparkle.
All right, guys. Well, we've had a very interesting chat. We had Lindsay had some great advice. We had Melissa Sparkletini, great advice. Thank you so much, guys, and all of you for chiming in and being engaged. And we hope that we helped.
Yes. Yeah, y'all are awesome.
In some ways.
Thank you so much.
And as much as you don't think, you have helped us. Because just reliving or just talking about those things, these are things that we hadn't talked to people in a long time. Because it's very personal for us. But just saying those things is helping us getting to a different vibration. Helping us release the things that we release. So you are helping us. Yeah, we work through our stuff, but that doesn't mean that we know it all. That doesn't mean that we've done it all or we're finished, because if we were, we wouldn't be here. So obviously I'm still here. So is Melissa, and so is Lindsay. So we want to thank you guys for allowing us to express ourselves, for allowing us to to tell our stories.
And holding space.
And holding space. Yeah. Thank you to the space holders.
Yes.
I really sat on my feet on this one. Thank you so much, beautiful ladies. Love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. Thank you so much. I'm doing the right things now. Good. Thank you, ladies. It's been real for sure. Have a lovely weekend. All right, my beautiful ones. I love you, love you, love you.
Thank you all for your comments.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Love you guys.
Love ya.